this morning you heard a lot. I think even starting from yesterday afternoon, yesterday evening, and this morning, about the relationship between agriculture, nutrition, health, disease, positive and negative, and actually so many proposals in advance. I want to ask first John McDermott from the Ely. You know the question I asked you? Want to ask you, John? Not yet? Yeah. We haven't had any chat before. From the session this morning and the complexity of the issues is very complex and involves so many people. If you are the prime minister of a developing country and you have to choose 3 most important strategy or measures to address this complex problem of agriculture, health and nutrition, and agriculture and disease. This morning, so many examples. I don't have to raise the example. I would like you to tell us which are the 3 most important strategies that you would want to do to improve the situation. And then I'll ask each panelist to add 1 more. If you agree with him and no more to add, okay. Just say okay. If you want to add something, please. And then I'll open the floor to add something or criticize the idea that, oh, this is lousy idea. I don't think a prime minister should do it. So the floor will be open for you. Okay, John?
Yes, thank you. So 3 ideas on how we move forward. The first one is that in these complex problems, it's good to try something. To try something and test how it's working. So, you know, we need evidence, and there's been a lot of discussion about evidence. But part of the evidence is about it doesn't really matter how big a problem is. It matters what you can do about it often. And so trying some things for the big problems that we already know are big around this shaping agriculture and looking at what's happening and reevaluate that, I think, is very important. The second thing is that needs to be done in a new way of working. We need new partnership arrangements for doing that. I think to begin with, they shouldn't be too heavy. We don't need to set up new institutions or organizations. It's much more around some of the things we heard about networking and doing different things or things in a different way. And the last one is I think we have to get comfortable a little bit with the fact that because things are complex, we'll always be wrong in the beginning and that we have to learn and get better as we go along. So we should try and do something that's positive to reduce the burden to make things better initially. But then as we move forward, let's not lose sight of the fact that, you know, even if we do simple things like vaccines or therapies or things like that that reduce burden initially, that's not necessarily tackling the whole problem and that we need to keep moving forward. So those are my 3 things.
So you want to do like the World Bank, not the WHO. There's a story at the executive board of the World Health Assembly. One of the executive board members in a meeting told a story that if you want to talk, you don't want to do anything, you go to the World Health Organization. Because it is a technical agency, it doesn't do anything. But if you want to do and to talk at the same time, you go to the bank. The bank knows everything and does everything. But most of the time they are wrong. Dominic, you want to add 1 more?
Sure. I agree with what John is saying. And of course, the one I would have said first would be to bring not working? Can you hear me? Okay, there. To bring the agriculture and health and other relevant sectors together and to mandate the ministers to work together, not just invite them to think about it. But John already said that, sort of. So if you'll allow me, I'd say not to forget the environment, and in thinking about agriculture for health, to remember that sustainable and environment in good condition is a prerequisite also for health, and that sometimes we forget that when we're trying to link agriculture and health.
Thank you. So you reiterate the issue of partnership networking, new way of working together. Dominique is from IDRC. She leads the Eco Health program of the IDRC. Okay, now we have someone local here. Professor Sinat Reddy. One more additional issue.
Well, you prefaced by saying that I should assume I'm the Prime Minister. So if I were the Prime Minister, I'm not going to get into individual specific issues. I would examine the recommendations of this conference and see how many of them are feasible for implementation immediately and how many can be rolled out over time. And I'll get a group within the government to examine them in terms of the process for implementation. But I would also ensure that there are timelines set for this process of interministerial coordination to implement, to develop also forecasting methods. I think one of the key elements that is missing is the impact assessment of policies in the agriculture sector, ranging from traditional agriculture to even livestock and tobacco and every other area, for their impact on health and food security and nutrition. So that impact assessment group has to be set up so that we are able to identify ahead of time what the likely impact is going to be and then try and correct policies which are likely to result in adverse impact and then promote policies which are likely to have a positive impact.
Policy coherence.
Policy coherence, but also technical capacity for impact assessment. Just like you are doing environmental impact assessment, also do health and nutrition impact assessment of policies in agriculture sector.
Do you want to put that as a condition for formulating or implementing any major public program? Do impact assessment first?
Well, just as environmental impact assessment has now become accepted, I think we need to bring this into the policy domain and so that we are not always reacting to policies that have gone wrong, but we are able to set policies in motion which are appropriate from the point of view of health and food security, particularly because of the criticality of agriculture for both of those.
Thank you. Professor Reddy is a cardiologist, right, by training?
Cardiologist and epidemiologist by training.
Cardiologist and epidemiologist by training, but he is the president of the Public Health Foundation of India, one of a very credible, very high social credit and social capital institute in this country in terms of public health. Dr. Kappa?
Thank you very much. I think that we need to get out of our comfort zones. We are all in our silos, it's very comfortable. And getting out of our comfort zones, I believe, should be doing things unusual. And when I say doing things unusual, it's not like going to the office, changing your gray suit to a blue suit, but changing your blue suit to a clown suit. When you wear a clown suit, that makes a difference. Everybody will take notice that there's something different here. So we really need to get out of our comfort zone. Let us get out of our blue suits and the gray suits and put on some clown suits, so that we need to change the attitudes, change the way we look at things, the way we interact with individuals. And I think more important, monitoring and evaluation. Some people call it teaching and evaluation. I think that's important. Right from the start, people tend to forget that and put that at the end. I think it should be at the beginning. Start thinking about monitoring and evaluation of whatever synergies that you're going to put together.
Thank you. Dr. Kabba is the former Director General of the West African Health Organization. It is not part of the World Health Organization, right? It is the West African country together. Okay, that's better. I'm not against the WHO, but I know too much about it. In summary, I can summarize into about 4 or 5 important recommendations if we want to move this ahead. First, examine all the recommendations that we have and go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it. Not only study good recommendation and then put on shelf. And CNAT has proposed that convene a group of experts to look into the recommendations and go ahead and do it. Second, to do it in a collaborative way. This morning, David Navarro advised us that we must all be silos breaker. Silos breaker. For me, it is next to impossible to ask WHO to work with FAO, to work with ILO, to work with OIE. This is next to impossible, but this is a big challenge. Third, use it as a learning process. Learn from right or wrong and improve it. And the fourth one, impact assessment. Tools to understand what's the real impact from major agricultural program that may have impact on environment and health. Now the floor is open. Please be brief. Introduce yourself, only your name, where you're from.
Chef Leroy, IFPRI. A couple of years ago, I worked with Ilri on a review.
Can you speak up a bit?
Yes. A couple of years ago, I worked with Ilri on a review of the literature where we looked at to what extent does promoting animal production lead to improved nutrition in households. And one of our conclusions was that in the part related to zoonotic diseases, we didn't find any evidence. What happens if you promote animal production with diseases at the household level? And that's a couple of years ago, so I would like to know whether we understand this connection better today, because I think it's of crucial importance to take that into account.
So you are recommending one additional issue, knowledge, generation and management. You want to learn more, which is important. I think this morning, John has mentioned that already, but I haven't put it down. Recommendation, please, or something do not agree with the speaker.
I'm Robert Boss from the WHO. I'm the living proof that you can work with FAO because I've done it for many years. I just wanted to say that it depends very much whether you're a prime minister of a rich, middle-income or a low-income country. But if I were the prime minister of a rich country, I would also do something about the policies of my bilateral aid agency, and I would make sure that that aid agency sets aside money that supports these intersectoral and multidisciplinary approaches in development, because the aid agencies are also compartmentalized into silos. And I wanted to ask Dominique, because IDRC, to my mind, is the only example of a support agency that has actually managed to do that internally. Whether she could give us some insight into how IDRC got to work around this issue of getting these various disciplines together internally.
I'm trying to address the issue of what first, and then we'll come back to how. How to work together, okay?
Les Borishevich, Vice-Chancellor, University of Cambridge, UK. If I was the Prime Minister, the first question I'd ask myself would be, do I want to get into this? The reason being is I think the construct is all wrong. We tend to think of this construct as a linear relationship between food and health. In fact, it's a dynamic relationship. And therefore, if I were to get involved in this, I've got to produce sustainability and long-term commitment, because the nature of the problem is still going to be there in 20 years' time, even if you deal with today's problems, because the dynamic, for example, the switch from infectious diseases to chronic diseases is going to change the dynamic that you're going to be working with, but the nature of the problem is still going to be there, and therefore you have to set up a system which enables you to have sustainability and long-term commitment. Playing with this for 3 to 4 years is just not on. You need to put that in, and that's why I would be asking myself the question, do I really want to get into this? Because the commitment has to be long-term and has to be sustainable for a rich country to be able to really commit to these major problems.
Are you recommending that we should not depend on politicians, right?
Ultimately, I would say that the solution resides actually within the academic sector, working closely with the financial sectors that actually exist within politics, but it's about collaboration between major academic centers that are going to find the solutions, because they're not going to reside totally within the political or policy sphere.
Anyone from the civil society or the community or the farmer sector, the real farmer? Because we talk a lot about wisdom, knowledge, generation, research. and politician. But how about the people? This morning we hear a lot. Is there anyone from the people sector? You?
Am I allowed to speak?
No more. Just this gentleman first.
Well, I'm a part of the people person, but I'm an academic. I think until you develop, though, the institutional base, even within academics, to work in this interdisciplinary field, it's going to be very difficult to project it outside. And until you have the knowledge base, you have the professional training, you're not going to change it. Everybody has been trained by discipline, and people work in silos because they've been trained in silos. So to break the silos, you have to start by training people that can address this in a multidisciplinary manner.
So you listen to this morning presentation and you feel that the proposal from the professor is appropriate. Start from training. Break the silo from the training.
I think purely from the farmer's point of view, the silos that we are talking about is only at our level. At the level of the farmers, there are no silos. I mean, they don't differentiate between health and nutrition and agriculture, really speaking. So basically, from our side, we need to have linkages and develop a package where we are able to offer health and nutrition and agriculture-related technologies and knowledge as a single package, rather than going in our silos to the farmer.
In summary, I hear many things. First, we need evidence. Two kinds of evidence: experimental evidence and experiential evidence. Experience is also very important through knowledge management. Explore them, all the recommendations, and act in a concerted manner. Learn from the action, and then grow the knowledge, grow the experience. We cannot depend only on politicians, right? So you have to have a knowledge people, professors, research, experienced people, wisdom. You need politicians, of course, they have authority over resources, decided resource management. And we need the community, the people themselves. How can we link the three together is a big question. But I want to come to the second question. This will be a tough one. The first one is okay. I have challenged to all of you that it is next to impossible to work together, and I reiterate that. Don't believe anyone from FAO, WHO, and ILO, and OIE that they work together very well. Only in the meeting rooms. Only in the meeting rooms. They never work well together, or else you don't have this chaotic situation. And the same thing in the ministry, in your own country, the same thing. Ministry of Health won't work together well with Ministry of Agriculture, Education. They have their own empire. Now we preach a lot about this intersectoral. Is there any real good example of success? And how can we learn from that?